Okay, I think we can probably start now. So let me unshare my screen and we can do the proceedings now. Just give me a second. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Chintan Barwara here once again from CMA Australia. I'll be your host for this webinar today, and we certainly live in quite interesting times because we are still in lockdown in Melbourne, and I'm doing this from my home. Janak is doing it from his home as well, and it really has been challenging for us here in Australia and all around the world as well. Over the last probably 5 or 6 months, we have increased the member services with having lots of webinars, topical issues being discussed, special interest groups that we've done as well. So as you are coming online today, you probably this wouldn't be your first one. And hopefully that we will continue to do some of these webinars on a regular basis, at least once a month. Today's topic is 50 Shades of the New Normal. Now, as we know that we are very, very agile in adapting to new situations. And what Professor Janak Ratnatunga has done is discussed 50 ways how the new normal comes into effect and how we have actually adapted to it. More so, also how companies have adapted to it. Also looking at a fact that employees have sometimes they have been forced into situations where even older generations and younger generation need to work together in a very different way. So without further ado, I think we've got around about 200 participants at the moment from different parts of the world. I think last I made a count, we had from around about 23 countries. So welcome everyone. Before I introduce Janak, just a little bit of housekeeping. What we do as regular basis, we will have this presentation from Professor Janak for around about 40 minutes. Considering that we have a lot of participants and there might be a little bit more questions asked, we will probably leave around about 20 odd minutes for questions at the end. What I hope you will do is to type in your questions in the Q&A box, which is on the Zoom thing, and we will take one question after the other and try to answer all of them in the time permitted. The chat window is not available for you, so please do not use the chat window if it's still available, but always use the Q&A box. A recording of this webinar will also be emailed to you sometime tomorrow. So if you have missed out certain elements or you want to go through certain elements of the presentation, you can probably view that again as well. So as I said, Professor Janak, thank you very much for coming along today. It has been always a pleasure to have you on Zoom, and always you have very insightful topics. The one topic today is very much of keen interest for me just because of the topic name, 50 Shades of the New Normal. Now, I think that the topic itself is so interesting that I hope that a lot of people coming on today will take some value out of it. Now, Professor Janak is Chief Operating Officer for CMA Australia. He also has been a senior academic with more than 10-15 years of senior appointments at Monash University, University of South Australia, and US universities as well. He primarily does research on management accounting and corporate strategy and corporate governance. Janak, I hand it over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chintan. Welcome everyone from all parts of the world. Some of you are getting up in the morning at about this time. Others, like us, it's about 4 o'clock in the evening in Melbourne. Our curfew starts in Melbourne at 8 o'clock, so we've got to get used to this new lifestyle. So let me now share my screen and we get the seminar going. Okay, everyone can see that? Chintan, all okay?
Yep, all good.
All good.
Perfect.
Right, so this topic, 50 Shades of New Normal, I'm actually going to go through 50 different things that we have to cope with. I've broken it up into 3 parts. This part here is looking at the society and politics behind what companies have to do. It's good for the companies to understand the political ramifications, because some of these issues have major impacts for companies. For example, I'll be talking about Donald Trump going to ban WeChat, okay, and that's going to cut out 1.2 billion people of Chinese background from accessing Western markets. But not only that, it will cut Western companies from accessing those markets. So it's going to be a huge change, and we have to look at the politics and the societal changes that are happening before we look at our own environment and our opportunities and threats. Okay, so why this seminar is important? Everyone in the world, from the richest tycoon to the poorest peasant, knows that the world changed radically in March 2020. It's not something that any of you do not know. Everyone knows this. Businesses are grappling to adjust to this new reality. Of course, the immediate need is survival. There are some companies that are actually prospering, but many of them are just learning to survive. Some country governments have helped companies to survive for a little while by pumping money to these companies, but once that money is over, they have to figure out what they're going to do with it. Now, beyond these immediate needs, businesses also need to plan to adjust for an alternate reality. It is not like a silver bullet is going to suddenly come in the form of a vaccine. They're already talking about mass production. But it doesn't mean that once the silver bullet appears, that we will reset the world into the 1st of January 2020. We had a lovely 31st night celebration, and then we entered 2020, did not realize that the world was going to change very fast. So it is very, very unlikely that the world will reset. So we have to get ready for this new reality. That is why much of what we are living today, what we are going through today, most likely will continue to be the new normal of tomorrow. So in trying to look at our business strategies, we need to have a holistic understanding of the new external environment and the opportunities and threats that go with it. So essentially, we need to do a SWOT analysis, okay, of what, sorry, I'm just trying to get my, okay. 1 minute to pin my video. Okay, right. So we really need to do a SWOT analysis of the situation today. In other words, the opportunities and threats by looking at the external environment, and then look inside us to look at what are the strengths we have to take advantage of the opportunities. There are opportunities in this, as you can see from this very seminar that we're having. Zoom has had a significant opportunity for its business. And of course, what are the weaknesses that we have that may be a problem given the threats. So that is essentially the reason why this seminar is important. Okay, so let's start. Now, as I told you, there are 3 parts. Part 1 is going to look at the social and political issues. Part 2 about economics, and that's going to be next week. And then part 3 about the interconnection, the global interconnection, the supply chains, and the climates, and so on. Okay, so essentially, even before COVID-19 or the coronavirus hit us, there was signs and warnings that a major disruption was around the corner. But we were not worried about it too much because they were not immediate, right? We had doomsday scenarios of the future that required, you know, looking at the not so distant future, but not immediate crisis management. And the biggest one, of course, was climate change. Okay, there were various people going on streets complaining, lots of things happening about the possibility of climate change if the world's temperature went up by 2 degrees. So that was a doomsday scenario, but it was not crisis management at the moment. There was also some concern about nuclear war in the Middle East, in the Far East, with Trump and all his negotiations or great negotiations happening. There was also that potential, but it was not considered immediate crisis management. There was also, for economists and bankers, and there are many of you all who are in this field, there was also concern that there are other technologies that were going to take over from the regular traditional banking exercise. And the big one was Bitcoin using blockchain technology. So essentially, there were some signs, and we were worried about certain things happening even before COVID-19. Now, these changes that we were going through was called in the past generational change. Okay, it is called generational change. Things change over the generations. As you can see, someone such as today, a child will watch a person called Daniel Tiger and Peppa Pig. Okay, they will watch that instead of what we used to watch in the past, Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. So these were happening. I mean, things change. Okay, then you had in the comic books, other than the movies, the comic books, Thor, the god of thunder, was already a female. Okay, so it hasn't come to the movies yet. Okay, the Avengers, Thor is still a man in the movies, but in the comic books, from where the movies come, Thor was a woman. And Superman was already dead in the comics. A person called Doomsday, in fact, had already killed him. So things are happening, generational change. What about out in space? We found that Pluto was too small to be considered a planet. So it was made not a planet. In fact, Pluto is actually smaller than our moon. And also we had Elon Musk sending a Tesla out in space that is currently orbiting the sun. Okay, so these are things that we took to granted, we read in the papers, are interesting generational change. There was also, even before coronavirus, the rise of populism. Okay, so-called democracies were actually dictators. Okay, I won't name these people, but you can see these were people who were supposedly running democracies, but they were running it as dictatorships. And the situation that these countries have got into today with coronavirus, no one could have imagined the mismanagement that would have happened and the complete loss of lives that has happened because of this mismanagement. So there was this rise in populism around the world. There was, of course, Brexit. Brexit was going on for a long time. And in January this year, can you imagine January this year, finally, Britain and the European Union parted ways after 47 years. There was, of course, these tensions in the South China Sea, the 7-dash line and all these sort of things, where China was reclaiming a lot of islands and the Philippines were complaining, Vietnam was complaining, Indonesia was complaining, and USA and Australia, of course, complaining. But there was very good tensions happening. And as you know, these tensions are still significant. Then there was an interesting thing called the Golden Arches theory. Okay, a person called Friedman, Thomas Friedman, a journalist, wrote an excellent book called The Lexus and the Olive Branch, where essentially Lexus was globalization and Olive Branch was peace. So he said that globalization will bring peace. And he made this comment that no two countries with a McDonald's restaurant have ever gone to war with each other, okay, since they opened the McDonald's. So what he was trying to say was the businessmen will know that war is bad for business and they will make sure that they won't go to war. So we had India and Pakistan fighting with each other, but never actually war, although recently they threw stones at each other, but still didn't fire a bullet. Okay, we had these situations. Okay, so China had McDonald's, India has McDonald's, should be okay. Syria, no McDonald's, problem. North Korea, no McDonald's, problem. So these the Golden Arches theory was just about holding that there could be peace through globalization. Now, of course, the big issue that has come up, has been happening for some time and has become a big issue now, is the rise in state-based hacking. So today, almost everything in Australia, for example, is all linked to the internet. Okay, if you can get into the internet, you can shut our water down, make traffic congestions, put on and off our electricity at will. All sorts of things can happen. And many states were accused, and there are some states that were more accused than the others, of actually promoting and sponsoring state-based hacking. Okay, so this of course caused a lot of concern with Trump actually, not only Trump, even Australia and England now has prohibited Huawei from going into the 5G systems in their countries. And also recently, TikTok was banned, or at least Microsoft was asked to buy it over. Otherwise, it can't run in the US. And the big one, just 4 days ago, was that Trump said from next month, we're going to ban WeChat. Now, that's a big one because 1.2 billion people will be left out. Okay, and it can go both ways. The Chinese market will not be open then to these American companies and vice versa. So you can see this whole thing of industrial espionage by the governments or state is causing these big tensions. And these have been happening for some time, but it has escalated after COVID-19. Okay, so these are some of the trends. Now we have done 6 of the new normals. Let's go on. Then there was this thing called the Me Too movement. Now, please don't think that just because you're in Indonesia or Philippines or Sri Lanka or India, you can ignore the Me Too movement. The Me Too movement was where there was significant issues about sexual harassment in the workplace. Of course, in many Western countries, lots and lots of big names, Harvey Weinstein and so on, have got accused and gone to jail and so on with this Me Too movement, okay? But in today's businesses, as businesses become such that there are many, many businesses where women are rising to positions of power and in fact can harass men, maybe the Me Too movement might become the Men Too movement, okay? Who knows? But there is a big, big issue of this Me Too movement. Okay, then we had President Obama telling everyone to be woke. We didn't know what this meant, woke. Has he got his English wrong? But actually woke meant being socially aware. Being socially aware of what's happening was the word woke, okay? Knowledgeable about what is happening around the world. So Obama is telling people, he's coming from African word saying that you wake up to the world. Be woke became actually a word that was used. Okay, an adjective, in fact. So this whole movement of Me Too and woke and so on, being socially aware, created a censorship culture. Okay, now there was also an extension of that to a culture of cancelled culture. Now, what's the difference between censored and cancelled? If there's one piece of work, for example, in a TV series, one particular episode has some reference to slavery or black words that should not be used and something like that, then you could censor that particular episode only. But it was much bigger to be cancelled. Cancelled means your entire body of works is no longer available. So they have cancelled many people, including Michael Jackson. They haven't been able to cancel Michael Jackson, sorry. They tried to cancel Michael Jackson after some pedophile accusations were made, but Billboard said he's too big to cancel. But there are Kevin Spacey, Reza Barr, even Woody Allen they tried to cancel because of his involvement with some his underage daughter whom he married later. So these are big issues. I mean, just imagine for a business and your entire portfolio is based on your royalties from your production of your movies or books or whatever, the whole works can get suddenly cancelled because someone today felt that it is not a good thing to have this in their based on today's morals and values, not when they were actually made. Okay, so this has all culminated into this big thing called Black Lives Matter. Now, don't think that just because you're in a country that actually you might think you are closer to the black than the white, that this doesn't matter. Actually, it does. In Australia, in fact, we have a really bad history of how we treated the Aboriginal people in Australia. So the Black Lives Matter actually started in 2014, but actually today, it is a big movement, okay? It has been actually made into a big one after COVID-19, when people just want to go out, I think, and there were protest marches against all health regulations in all parts of the world. So Black Lives Matter. And that means that a lot of people who were considered heroes in the past were considered not very good because of their various past episodes, such as supporting slavery, racism, and so on. Even they tried to take down Winston Churchill's statue because Winston Churchill clearly had a very, very racist history. He didn't like Indians, and all his writings were anti, and he starved 2 million people in India to send food to his troops in the West. So they had to protect Winston Churchill with a box, a steel box, so that his statue will not be defaced in England. It was defaced in other countries. So then there was a call for defunding the police. Now you might think that defunding the police, what does that mean? That do we not give any money to the police? No. Actually, what it means is if you look at old movies of America where the police are there, they're just in a normal uniform with a blue cap and so on. Just look at Police Academy, the movie, and look at what they are today in full battle gear, military, and they come with essentially armored vehicles. Why is that? Because the American government passed legislation that all military hardware can be bought by the police, and they gave police the money to buy military hardware. So today you find policemen who are dressed like military people, and that's what is meant by defund the police. Don't put so much of money to make the police look like military, but use that money to do better schools and so on. So you have to understand what's happening in the business environment, and these things are going across the world. It's not only America. Then I've already mentioned blockchain. Blockchain was an electronic way of doing transactions down at the granular level, where we can capture information and we can link it up at the granular level information together. And that of course gave rise to things like Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and even Facebook tried its own version called Libra. It's slightly different to the blockchain technology, but essentially a different type of currency was put forward. So these are again concerns that the bankers had that now have become a little bit more concerning after COVID-19. So essentially these are some of the things that happened before we had the COVID-19. It was gaining space. Generational change at a much higher level was happening. Then of course we had the Big Bang, the new normal. The exact date that this happened is not very clear. In December 31st, the WHO found that there were some statements in the press by the Wuhan Municipal Health Council. 27 January, they urged countries to be careful about international travel, but it was only on the 11th of March that WHO announced that COVID-19 was a pandemic. But by that time, it was too late. By that time, thousands of people through international travel had taken the virus to all corners of the earth. And today we are going through that. Today Australia is going through a second wave, of return travelers, causing a second wave to come out. So once the COVID-19 became a pandemic, there were certain things that were directly applicable. And I think all of you know this, so I won't go through much into it. Flattening the curve essentially was where if you allow less people to get it, the amount of people might be the same, but you will be able to prevent the healthcare capacity, and that's essentially ventilators and intensive care unit rooms to be spread out amongst the population. So there was this issue of flattening the curve, travel restrictions. Airlines are supposed to be full carriers of coronavirus to all parts of the world. Social distancing, we have to keep 1.5 meters away from each other. Homeschooling, all of you from every part of the world was in some way involved in, at some stage, homeschooling now. Self-quarantine, we had to put ourselves under self-quarantine, and some of these were forced quarantines to stay at home, at least for 2 weeks. Lockdowns, hotspots that made entire cities. Now that's a picture of Chinese city completely devoid of any traffic. Hotspots are where certain areas were considered bad and had to be looked at. And of course, we had to all start living with masks, even playing with our children outside had to be with masks. okay, and contact tracing. In Australia, we have a phone system through our iPhones. In Singapore, it's much more sophisticated. In China, there's actually something that you do to say when you're going out and in from your own flat. All of these contact tracing was happening. And of course, the big issue of ventilators, ICUs, and finally, the silver bullet that we are all praying for, and that is a vaccine. Of course, Russia claims that it has got the first vaccine. Not too sure how many people are going to accept it. They are still not finished the testing, but it looks like the one, it should not be a race, but it looks like the one from Oxford University is most likely to be the one that might be the most safe and one that has been most proven. Okay, now that's things that directly were affected by the coronavirus, but so many things have started impacting us indirectly. The biggest issue that I want to talk about is the issue of frontline workers. Now, we thought it is the medical people who are frontline workers. But when we all went into shutdown, we found that it was not only the medical people, it was so many others who were frontline workers. I mean, your people who are doing your cleaning, your cooking, your delivering of food, okay, all of these people caring for those in aged care facilities, all of these are part of our frontline workers. And unfortunately, if you leave aside the medical profession, they were earning very, very low salaries. Okay, so your hedge fund managers, even accountants, okay, the accountants are required for some things, but not essential workers in that sense. They were earning a much higher salary than the poor frontline workers. Okay, so the frontline workers, okay, these are the people who are truck drivers, taxi drivers, supermarket staff. In Australia, we had a great toilet roll run out where supermarket staff had to limit customers to only 2 toilet rolls. Okay, now I'm going to give a little plug to my son's toilet roll company. His company is called Who Gives a Crap. That's his toilet roll. They are online delivery of toilet rolls. Okay, half the profits go to charity. So last year, the amount of charity they gave was $700,000 to make toilets and other things around the world. This year, his profits, that half the profit that gave to charity was $5.3 million. That's how much of toilet paper sales went through the roof, just went up. Okay, so Who Gives a Crap? Go online and have a look at that. Okay, so as I told you, this pandemic has exposed and accentuated inequities in the economic system. Those in white-collar jobs can work from home, but essential frontline workers must continue to work, and therefore at a greater risk of contracting COVID-19, all the while for poor pay. What happens to their leave? Do they get sick leave if they go sick? So now, just yesterday or day before, Australian government finally agreed that you don't have to prove that you got COVID-19 by working in the hospital. If you're a hospital worker and you get COVID-19, you're automatically on sick pay leave from the company. Okay, so but what about other countries? Okay, these are the biggest risk. Okay, so you can see these are people who are really taking a lot of risks for very little pay. Okay, your 3-wheel drivers, your taxi drivers, those in industries such as hospitality, disproportionately young female with black or brown skin, even in the USA, have borne the brunt of these, I should say, of these job losses. Okay, now of course the big one that is again indirect but happening in your home was the boom of Netflix and the YouTube. Okay, lockdowns of entire city created a new normal of access to news and entertainment. We couldn't get enough of the Netflix series, about the news and so on. Okay, streaming services such as Netflix and YouTube had a 50-fold increase in traffic. So as I told you, some businesses actually made a lot of money, did very well. Okay, now a lot of people got caught. In fact, I have got caught to this YouTube rabbit hole. If you look up the word YouTube rabbit hole, you'll find that it is when you look at one YouTube video and then you see something else that looks interesting, and you see another YouTube video that follows, and about 1 hour later, you suddenly realize, why the hell am I watching this video when I started with something completely different before? So this is called the YouTube rabbit hole. You don't know where you're going. And lots of people around the world with nothing to do, staying at home, got caught to the YouTube rabbit hole. So of course, this is great advertising opportunities for companies, okay, because people are stuck and looking at these sorts of things. Then of course, the bad, vicious part of it was your fake news, where Facebook became fake book, okay? Essentially confusing, conflicting, non-scientific information about COVID-19 origins, treatments, and conspiracies. Okay, so this is where you had people saying how great it is to use bleach or Clorox to get rid of coronavirus, or saying how good hydroxychloroquine is. Now, lots of doctors in India and Thailand and Sri Lanka use hydroxychloroquine, but it has not been scientifically proven. To tell people to just take it without any medical advice was crazy, and you know who advised people to do that. Okay, so the one that we are all involved in is working from home. Okay. There's been a new working from home culture, but remember that I have written an article about this in your On Target magazine. But just look at the issues: how to share Excel files from multiple locations without any broken links. These are big issues. Just emailing a file, you'll have 5 different people having 5 different versions of the file. So how can you share it without any broken links? Boosting your internet bandwidth. Suddenly, everyone in the house, from your son doing the school or university to your wife who's working, are using bandwidth. Building corporate networks that actually go beyond the corporation into people's houses. How do you do information security and data protection? Okay, is your information secure on a line that your wife has access to, or your girlfriend, or your boyfriend, or your toy boy, or your son, whatever, has access to? And then what happens to workplace safety? Are you covered? If you fall down the staircase at your home while you're doing work, is it covered by workplace safety laws? So these are big issues of companies have to come to grips with in terms of working from home. Of course, today what we're doing now is our Zoom meeting. A Zoom culture has become one of the major shades of the new normal, thanks to a profound resonance within business in the work from home environment. Zoom is also a big winner with millions of people forced to stay at home to help stop the spread of COVID-19. Okay, so people are doing not only business meetings, but they're doing trivia nights, birthday parties, quizzes, all on Zoom, often using the business account. Okay, so these are, of course, a big winner. It's gone huge. Okay, something like 50 to 60-fold increase in the downloads. Okay. And finally, the last shade of the new normal in terms of politics and society is the family dynamics. Okay. Of course, there has been the good part of it. The families have got together, they've gone walking together, exercising together, but there are others who have just sat in front of their televisions and become what they call couch potatoes and just eating, snacking while watching or going down the YouTube rabbit hole. But unfortunately, there is the vicious part of it as well, where family violence reporting, especially in Australia, not too sure about other countries, has significantly increased. Okay, family violence. I think it's reported globally that there is a increased incident. Okay, you can stay with your wife or husband for so long, but not more longer than that. These have also come about. So these are 35 of the 50 shades that I will be talking about today, that I have talked about today. Okay, so in summary, in this part 1 of a 3-part series, the political and social alternate reality that the world finds itself are covered. Okay, now what has happened really is that there was a movie called Back to the Future. In part 1, this person, Michael J. Fox, goes back in time to 1955 from 1983. In part 2, he sets the thing wrong and he goes to an alternate reality. And you see this scene in the movie where the doc is showing how they've deviated to an alternate reality. It seems that we are in this alternate reality in part 2 of Back to the Future, where in that movie, interesting, that came out in about 1985, right? There is a thing called Biff Towers, not Trump Towers. And this person who's the villain was actually modeled after Donald Trump, the same hairstyle. So are we in part 2 of Back to the Future. Let's hope we can get back to part 1 of the Back to the, it won't be the same, but at least we can live with it. Okay, so significant changes are already happening. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, these changes were supercharged during the COVID-19 pandemic, creating lasting shades of new normal. When the pandemic hit, further shades were added to our regular lexicon that were both directly related to efforts to reducing infections and to forced lifestyle changes. Or in all, 35 shades of new normal were covered. Okay, now what does, in the next part, in next week I'll cover crazynomics, but what does this mean for companies? Okay, so the 3 parts of the article taken as a whole discuss the 50 shades that we have to look at, and it shows the interconnection that range from economic, political to finance, and sustainability and more. Okay, it also looks at how we can look at our external environment, our opportunities and threats. So essentially, as I told you right at the start, we have to understand the external environment to look at what are the opportunities and threats, and then see if we have the strengths to take advantage of the opportunities as Zoom did, or the weaknesses to try to keep away our threats. Now, some of the things that you learn in the CMA program is very, very important to do this. Now, here is some, I'm not saying that I fully agree with it, but it looks about right at what they expect after COVID-19 finishes, who the winners and losers are going to be. You can see some obvious ones like food delivery, video conferencing, and so on, becoming winners after COVID-19. And the losers are the obvious one: airlines, hotels, restaurants, conferences, okay, at least conferences where people go face to face. These are going to considered users. Now, don't worry if you are one of these in the loser category. What this means is you have now an opportunity to think about restructuring, thinking about something else. Okay, where can we go? Where can we do? You can't do the same thing all the time. So what can we do? So one of the greatest tools that we talk about in CMA program to do this is this Ansoff matrix. Okay, so if you look at this, we have existing markets and existing products. Say you're in the travel business. Well, that market is almost dead and may not resurrect completely after COVID-19 is over. So now the existing market, that's your existing customers, can you give some new products? Well, if they are related to travel, again, that might be problematic. Let us say you are doing airline bookings and tours. What if you do adventure tours? What if you do specialty trips? They are still related, they're new products that you're having, but they are related to existing customers who may not want to travel. You might think about trying to sell your existing products to new markets. Okay, existing products of your tours and so on to new markets. You can go to areas where travel restrictions have been removed, where there are some interesting things happening, where they're waiting for people to come. So you might consider taking your products to new markets. But one of the things that you have to think about is, can we get out of our current business completely? Should we diversify? Now, one of my students in the CMA class in Sri Lanka, he was in the hotel business. He was organizing tours for Australian tour agencies. He was doing the local travel part of it. When the Easter bombings came and all the hotels, you know, had a problem and there was no one coming to Sri Lanka, he used that time to diversify into going to hotels and saying, look, no one is coming. Why don't you modify your hotel and why don't you become interior design, do a better thing for your hotels? And then they learned how to do interior design and took that technology or what they learned into the condominium market. So now they have 2 business lines. They're the travel, which again has stopped because of coronavirus, but the condominium market is still going on. There's an interior design company. So think outside the box. And that is the beauty of the Ansoff matrix, because it forces you to think, where can we go to? Okay, especially once the coronavirus has reduced, the dangers have reduced. Now, there are 2 things that I can advise you before I finish as how to do this. And that is, the type of businesses that people want can be categorized into two categories: the help me businesses and the show me businesses. And the ideal is if you can have a help me business within a show me business. So what is the help me business? Help me ideas are business ideas which aim to solve a current pain point. I have a problem, can you solve it? Okay, so TripAdvisor, people are saying, how do we know this hotel is good? How do we know that this place is nice? Okay, why don't we get independent verification of this? And that is where TripAdvisor came in, to give trusted travel information. Don't believe the hotel brochures or the airline tour packages. Look at TripAdvisor. So that is the pain point. How do I get trusted information? TripAdvisor. Show me ideas is things that we already do, but done in a different way. Okay. Enlighten customers about how things also can be done. So Uber is a good example. We always had taxis. We never thought about the fact that we had all cars at home that were doing nothing. And Uber found an alternate way to taxis with their platform. Of course, in a lot of countries, this has taken off even amongst the three-wheelers and so on. So these are the interesting areas. If you're in a place that I just showed you as a loser, okay, don't worry. Think how you can change, diversify, get into another area, okay? And here are two areas that you have to sit down with your company, with your management, brainstorm, and try to say how we can do it, okay? Travel businesses, one way you can do complete diversify is start making packaging company, make it a logistics company, okay? Rather than taking human beings who could get COVID-19, send packages. You have the same technologies, you have the same context, you know the networks, use the packaging. Okay, so these are ideas that you throw up if you're in these industries. If you're in a winner industry, make best advantage and grow that industry. Okay, so that's a little bit of advice for you. Okay, so I've just gone a little over time, but thank you very much for your time. And now we will take up some questions.
Thank you, Janak. Insightful presentations. I can probably ask you some of the questions before we start addressing people from the crowd. One of the questions that I had, you know, the slide that you had where winners and losers for certain industries post-COVID?
Yes.
It was quite interesting that, as you mentioned, that you don't agree to all of them, or you might not everybody would agree to all of them. One thing that struck me was food delivery services. I would reckon that the business for food delivery services and services like Amazon or eBay has exponentially increased during the COVID era. What we've seen in certain markets where COVID now has kind of diminished, the impact has diminished, they're finding that companies who actually put in a lot of expenditure on the systems and things are facing an issue where their demand has actually quite dropped, because people are now started going to shopping centers, and you know, you do not need so many fulfillment centers for online and things of that sort. So like, for example, Australia, we know that in Victoria, where we're currently staying, in Melbourne, if we have a lockdown, if I want to buy something from a retail shop, I normally do it online through Amazon or from their own store as well. However, other states have actually opened up. So the amount of online orders that they normally were getting during the COVID era has significantly dropped. I think I saw an article in the Age newspaper that certain states have dropped nearly 30 to 40%. So it depends on where you are and what you do, but there will be a drop. So I think they were saying that companies need to be very careful now, even though some countries are waiting for the second wave and the third wave coming up. The issue then still follows saying, how much investment do you actually make looking at a short-term thing for, say, 2 or 3 months? You know, what if it kind of diminishes and vaccines come out? I'm sure probably by the end of year or by January, February, there will be vaccines in most countries available. You know, things will probably go back to normal. It will take a lot of time, but a lot of investments being made at this time with current situations might backbite a few industries in that sort of sense as well. So just wanted to have your feedback on that.
Okay, so look, I have seen articles claiming that what you are saying, that people are suddenly flocking into shopping centers and so on. But the issue is, the counter argument is this a thing that has been locked up for so long that they just want to go out. They want to do some actual visual shopping, right? And so there would be a spike at the start. But what I'm saying is that people have got, that were never doing online deliveries, that were never doing click and shop, that were never getting food to the home. Now they have got used to it. They know that that alternative is available, okay? And therefore they will be expecting it as well. So it is that these things I would believe would go up anyway, because people are now considering that as one of their options. The fact that it has, all the people are rushing to the cafes. I mean, I am waiting to go to my my son-in-law's cafeteria once this is over, because I need that coffee from him delivered, right? Although I pay a huge price for it.
Yeah.
But after some time, I might get used to the online. That's the point that I'm making.
No, that's good. Thank you very much for that. Janak, we'll take some questions. Just in interest of time, we've got around about 13 minutes left. We've got quite a number of questions there. So if we take one by one now, what do you prefer, Janak? Do you want me to read some of the questions out?
I can see them. The first one is Velin Kusuma's question, is it?
That's correct.
That's correct. So I can actually read it out and then I can answer it.
That's perfect. Yep.
Okay. So she is a CMA Indonesia member. Businesses face new challenges in new normal era. How the business can build resilience and adjust to 50 shades of new normal. Okay, so I think what I'm trying to show is that in my article, in my presentation, is that you have to understand the new normal first. And that's why I showed you the 35. And then at the end, if you remember, I said, okay, now that you understand it, you have to really go back to basics and do the things that we always do in our CMA classes in strategy. Look at your SWOT analysis, look at your ANSOF, look at your Boston Consulting Group metrics and so on, and come out, but with an understanding of what are the 50 shades. So that's my answer to that question. Second question is, I have just recovered from COVID. Oh, this is a good seminar. It really predicted to see the future. That's good. Thank you very much for that comment. Okay, and I hope you're getting better. Okay, that you're, I know we know of one ICMA member who unfortunately died from Indonesia with COVID. We don't know of any others, but I'm happy that you've got cured. Okay, the same. Another question is, can we have access to these recordings? And of course, the answer is yes. Chintan, you want to answer that one?
Yes, that's correct. So as I said before we started, we record all our webinars. We will send you a link to this recorded webinar to everyone who's registered sometime tomorrow. You will be able to access the webinar recording for about 15 days. And after that, the link becomes inactive. So that's a Zoom feature. We use that feature for members to access the webinar recording. So the answer is yes, thank you.
Okay. The next one is that very important question, actually, a comment really from Mr. Kishore. This is not a question, just an additional important point that even before COVID, people stopped retail capital expenditure on automobile property and even on retail. That is very, very valid. And that's why I went through a number of things that were happening already before, okay, including some things like Me Too and Black Lives and all of that. But they were all supercharged with COVID-19. For some reason, all of these gradual changes were supercharged. And today we are living in a different world that is not mere generational change, but new normal. Okay, there's Nilanga thanking me. Dennis, hello Daniel. Is this COVID-19 speed up blockchain technology? Well, that's a good question. Our Indonesian president is asking, will COVID-19 speed up blockchain technology? Yes, I would say that there's a number of people now working in a number of areas. And in fact, I have seen sites like Amazon or duplicating what Amazon is doing based on blockchain technology. Okay. So I think that some of these technologies will certainly speed up. A blockchain, remember, is where you can have a guaranteed endorsed transaction, verifiable transaction between two parties. The only thing is you don't know sometimes who the parties are. Okay, so this is where they have to come up to a very secure way of linking these things. Until that time, I'm not too sure it will become mainstream, but it's certainly looking that way. Okay. Hi, Professor Janek, great presentation. Would you recommend combining ENSOR matrix with the 4Ps framework? Yes, of course. We do that in the class. The 4Ps framework and the ENSOR metric is very much used, especially in market penetration. The 4Ps is product, price, promotion, and place. Okay, we use that very much in not only penetrating the market, but developing new markets as well. So 4Ps are in everything in marketing and strategy, comes back to the 4Ps framework. Nilanga again, since technology plays a major role in COVID era, what are your recommendations on reverse mentoring to companies? Now, I presume when you're saying reverse mentoring, I'm not sure about the terminology here, but you essentially are looking at what has happened to a company and going back to find out where are the mistakes they make. I presume that's what it is doing. Okay, where did we fall short? And if that is your meaning of reverse mentoring, I think that's a very good area. Chintan, you have any views on that?
No, not particularly. I think you covered that.
Yeah, because I think I don't know if Nilanga has a different view, but for me, if that's what he's talking about, it is, okay, we are in this position now, let's see where we went wrong and how we can change it, would be a sort of reverse mentoring that I will be talking about.
And I think just to add on that, I think technology is playing such a critical role now. I think companies that were not tech savvy, especially I'm talking about the small to medium sized enterprises, they have to had a steep learning curve in that matter of adjusting their business model. And what it is reverse mentoring on that is they are actually talking to companies and adjusting their business practices based on the technology rather than doing the other way around. So that's happening at the moment as well.
Right, thank you. Okay, so we have Ungul. Hello, Ungul. He said during new normal and post-COVID-19 situation, do you think this also changed the way we do feasibility study or business plan analysis? Okay, now the thing is that all our feasibility studies before we had the pandemic, we never ever planned for a pandemic. Okay, so however, we actually should have planned for a pandemic. It's not something that came out of the blue. We already had the SARS virus outbreak, we had swine flu, where certain supply chains are significantly affected. So it is not something that people say it is, unprecedented change and so on, okay? It was there, it should be part of our business plan. But now, of course, we are, especially in our risk management plan, okay, definitely a situation where all our supply chains shut down at the same time, okay, all our customers can't be contacted, all our suppliers are not contactable. These things should be part very much of a risk management plan, okay?
Yeah, Janak, just to add on that,
yes,
I think when you do feasibility studies and business plans and policy frameworks, I'll give you an example. I'm a school council member for my son's school. The school is a state school, and the school has a pandemic policy, always had a pandemic policy. Now, all other policies on risk management and other things, or disease outbreaks and things of that sort, were at least 3 or 5 pages long with detailed steps on it. The school has all state schools have always had a pandemic policy, which is half a page long, right? Now, in the last 100 years, it's never happened and nobody kind of thought about it. So there always had been a policy which was never revisited, never redone, or never actioned, or never touched. It was half a page long. So when we actually were on the council meeting, we were all kind of scratching heads along saying, yes, we do have a pandemic policy, which actually doesn't say much. So, forget about having a policy. If you're planning for a business risk management matrix kind of thing, I don't even know where you would start. So it's a very interesting dilemma. Thank you.
Okay, now Ungul, just to complete the answer to your question about feasibility study, in my next part of this talk, I'm going to talk about the economics of it and also what's happened to interest rates and so on. And I think that's a very important part when you come to that, to see how many of the net present value calculations and so on we use for our feasibility studies actually have to be thrown out of the window. Okay, so that's why I'm calling the next topic crazynomics. Okay, so hope to see you in that one to answer further your questions. The next one I have is, as a management accountant, what skill set should we acquire or develop so that we can continue to add value given the challenges of the new normal? I think, to be honest, and I'm not pushing the CMA program, but I think management accountants are the one set of people who are the best qualified to help in this new normal, because we are the ones who are planning for the future. The financial accountants, and I come from a background of financial accounting myself, we look at the past, we audit the past. Okay, now the past has happened, and even the financial accountants don't know how to put out audit reports anymore, saying what has happened with the new normal. But we have been trained to look into the future. And therefore, I think that all of the skill sets that we have are very, very important for the next new normal. Roy, hi Roy from Dubai.
Sorry, Janak, you've got one before that.
Stephanie.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry, I didn't see that. During this COVID period, one of the key issues is working capital and cash. Absolutely right. Some incentives are given to them, such as early payment discount or rebates. Does it really work out? What would be your suggestion? Now, Stephanie, I don't know what's happened in your country, but in Australia, the government has pumped something like 120 to 140 billion dollars into an economy, essentially to give people cash. It hasn't got to all the companies or all the people. And again, in my next talk, I'm going to show how the consequences of all this cash coming into the system suddenly. In America, it is $4.2 trillion of what we call quantitative easing has been pumped into the system. In other words, money printed has been pumped into the system. Okay, it may work in the short term, but we are not going to see in the long term. Okay, so I don't think you're talking about cash in the economy. I think you're talking about, should we give discounts and rebates? In other words, should we tell our customers to pay early, and should we lower that? Look, it's a difficult one. If customers are never going to pay, it may not help giving them the discount. If they were going to pay, then you're losing money by giving the discount. But it's something that you have to make a policy decision about, and about your own company's feasibility or what the products that you're selling. Okay, so that is one thing.
Janak, I'll just
yes.
add on that.
Yes.
I think what's happening right now is companies will need to be mindful of what they do and how they address the situation, because a lot of people are out of jobs. A lot of people are reduced working hours. Some industry has gone under. So if your client base is majority on those markets, if, for example, if you're a utility company or a telephone service provider, you will have a lot of customers who are having issues with that. What are you going to do if you're not going to give rebates, if you're not going to give discounts for the situation? You are predominantly saying that, look, we don't care about you, and whether you pay up or not, you still have to pay up the full amount. So it becomes kind of a PR disaster if you don't do anything, and it actually works against you if you do something that is completely opposite. I'll give you an example. Like, I live in, we have a council, the municipality here, which is Stonington. Now, most of the councils in Melbourne have reduced rates. They're giving 10% discount on council rates, right? And our council is the one who's actually put 2% rate rise. It has had such a bad impact on the councillors and the council members that when everybody else is actually giving a discount, how are you actually charging more in this current situation where retail shops are down, people don't have income in terms of hospitality and all these things. So I think you need to be aware that whatever actions you take as a company right now is going to be really, really badly impacted on your reputation coming out of the COVID crisis.
Yeah. Look, I'm aware of the time, so there's a lots and lots of questions, but I won't be able to get to them. Okay. I just take two more, and one is from Mr. Kanal, who says, Kanal, who's being a least developed country and import-based economy, Nepal to emerge stronger from the COVID crisis, what sort of steps should be taken by the government? Please provide your opinion. That's a very, very difficult question to answer, because I'm not too sure how much of leeway the government has in terms of restricting or in fact making imports cheaper. I mean, are they to reduce their taxes, import duties and so on? I know that in Sri Lanka, okay, they have actually banned everything. Okay, they've banned importing of everything except petroleum and a few others. Even computers have been banned. It's crazy when a country is going into work from home and they're saying that we can't import computer parts. Okay, so sometimes the governments take knee-jerk reactions without thinking through it. But Nepal, not too sure if I can answer one way or the other, if they should actually put any reduction of tariffs to improve the imports coming into the country, or should they put any tariffs in there to prevent imports coming in and maybe make the exports more conducive to the foreign countries? Okay, so that's a difficult question and really one that I don't know enough about the country to answer properly. And the last question that I'll take up is from Claudius. Okay, he says, one analyst said that people now just postpone their spending for keeping their cash because of uncertainty. And after this pandemic is over, he predicts that there will be a significant increase in people spending consumption for the first 2-3 months. Now, that is essentially what even Chintan was saying, that a lot of people are now visiting supermarkets and buying and so on, right? That is a prediction, but I think what's happening is that they're still not sure until they are 100% sure that COVID-19 has gone out of the window, if they are going to be able to spend that much. People are, in fact, still saving, although the government is trying to encourage them to spend. Okay, people are actually taking the government money meant for food and actually putting them in the bank. Some of them, of course, are gambling and so on with it. Now, next week's talk on Crazynomics, I'm going to address that particular question, okay, about why people are saving their money, why the stock markets are booming when there's a recession happening. All of these issues I will cover in the next few of the new normal, okay? So we see some of you all next week. Over to you, Chintan.
Thank you, Janak, very much. Thank you for spending some valuable time to give us your presentations on the 50 Shades of New Normal. I'm sure a lot of people would have had some good value out of this presentation as well. As I mentioned earlier, we are recording this webinar. We will send you a link of this webinar recording sometime tomorrow. Along with that link, we will also send you details how to register for the next one. I think, Janak, we are doing the next one on September...
Next Thursday.
Next Thursday.
Yeah.
Yes, we're doing it next Thursday. I will send you the link to that as well. So if you can register for that, that'd be great as well. So
no, sorry. Next, is it 20? No, it's in September. When is it?
September 4th, I think you mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah, 2 weeks time. Sorry, no, not next Thursday.
Yeah. So in a fortnight's time, September 4th.
Time. Sorry, everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. So on September 4th, we'll have the same one at the same time from 4 to 5. I'll send you the details for that as well. So again, thank you, Janak, very much. And thank you everyone for logging in. We've had a tremendous response to that. We had around about 220 people logged in to see the webinar. And I'm sure a lot of people will benefit from the recording as well. Until next time, see you and take care. Bye.